Hi, I'm Richard Lund, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles. You can tell the picture says that. In fact, that's why I picked it. You might recognize the picture. I created this picture some years ago for The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and I really enjoyed working in that field and television, late night especially. It was kind of fun. It was always reassuring that every night I could, Monday through Friday anyway, I could pop on the TV and see my work, and it's kind of nice. Now, lately, you might see me on those, I think they're called a pre-roll ad or maybe a ClickFunnels video or something like that, where this annoying guy in bib overalls sitting at the kitchen table says, you know, there's 5 foods that are the worst foods for arthritis, and you might be eating 4 of them right now in your sandwich. And anyway, so I've been downsizing my life a little bit. As I get a little bit older, it's a lot simpler, but I'm still having fun, and that's what counts. So really, tonight, this is more a message to my family and friends, although other people may want to listen in. I want to dedicate this video to somebody very important to me. 2 people, really. But first, I want to say I'm on a journey. I'm on a journey to live a healthy 100 years. Maybe you want to come along. This video is dedicated to George F. Howe. George passed away within the last year. George was the department head at Los Angeles Baptist College, where I went to college. I studied biology. And George would take us in his van. We'd go out on field trips. He was a botanist. Interesting guy. Really helped me understand how to think. And, of course, read, science journals and stuff like that. And so I have to say thank you to George. I think of him being in the arms of Jesus today. And another person I also want to thank and dedicate this video to is Li Chin's son. She's still with us. She's just slightly younger than me. Dear lady, who is my Chinese doctor. She trained in China, both as an herbal doctor, 5th generation herbalist, and also as a medical doctor. And she did some good research. She had, at one time, was the head of acupuncture at Beijing 301 Hospital. Now, you can't look up Beijing 301 Hospital because of the Tiananmen Square incident. Some things were scrubbed, and that was one of them. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about today, what's going on right now. And, of course, I always want to help you understand that this presentation is for educational purposes only. If you are sick, see a doctor. Maybe you can find one that speaks herbal medicine. I'm not a doctor. And if you take medical advice from me, you are not doing it right. This is not the purpose. It's just to talk about some things that I think are important to consider, at least for me and my family. And then what you do is up to you. So we're thinking about this coronavirus, we've heard about. There's a picture of it provided by the U.S. government. And the coronaviruses are not our friend. And I think there's 7 of them now that come visiting human beings. I think the 4 are maybe cold viruses of some kind. And then there's the MERS virus and the SARS virus. And now the SARS-CoV-2, which is the new one on the block. I want to say, question, can we help our body fight this virus? And the answer, I believe that maybe we can with traditional Chinese medicine. Now, of course, that's using herbs, plants, primarily, although sometimes they use animal parts as well. But I'll be talking about plants tonight. And that's, in particular, one plant, Isatis indicata. I say that indicatica. Isatis indicatica. Try to say that 3 times fast. Isatis indicatica. Isatis indicatica. Isatis indicatica. Anyway, you get the idea. So I'm trying to make a little fun here because SARS is this, not SARS, but the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes the disease called COVID-19. Let's see if I can pull it up here. There it is, the COVID-19 disease. And this is an actual electron micrograph, which is kind of fun to think about. We didn't have those kind of things at our college when I went to college. And if we had, I probably would have never left the lab. So maybe it's a good thing. But it has caused a lot of people to be sick, a lot of disruption in China and starting now around the world. I'm recording this on February the 23rd, 2020. And so it's been known for a few months now, and it's not pleasant. And I think we're going to be on the west, where I live in Los Angeles. We're going to have some problems coming up here. So we're just trying to think about what we can do. Are there things we can do? I mean, yes, we wash our hands. We need to wash our hands, take good hygiene. Keep away from people that are sick. Maybe even not do so much handshaking and giving a hug and all that business. It's just to kind of to thought about what is the best thing to do. And one of those things would be to look at some herbs. Now, Dr. Howe taught me, again, to read and reason, read people's research and try to understand it. A lot of papers that are published are not necessarily doing primary research. They're talking about ones that's already been done or talking about ideas. And so tonight we're going to look at some of those and maybe help you understand why I went the direction I did. Why did I think that Isatis would be something good to talk about today? In fact, in the world of Chinese medicine, Isatis has two forms. One which grows below ground and the part that grows above ground. They'll usually refer to that as folium, the foliage, if you will, but it's also the stems and the twigs and that stuff. And then the part that goes below ground, they're often referred to as a radix. So that means a root or sometimes a rhizome. So roots go straight down and rhizomes are sideways, growing like a potato is more like a rhizome, and a carrot is more like a root. At least the way I think about it. You can just imagine that I might play Santa Claus at Christmas time, and I did this year again. Now, for some Santas, after the 24th of December, it's all over. And, they're ready to kick back and relax. But where I live, because we have a number of people that have the Eastern tradition, we have Western Church and Eastern Church. The Eastern tradition, Santa might not come only on Christmas Eve, but he also might come New Year's Eve. That would be true of Russians, and or sometimes the story is told about Ded Moroz and wishing everyone a new year. Snowbom Goldem, I think is the way it goes. But there are some parties and things that I do as Santa after the 25th of December. And so it's hard to be a Santa and stay healthy. And if you're not healthy, you can't really, be a good Santa, because you don't want to give the gift of sickness to somebody else. And you also want to be, cheerful and jolly and all that. I took Christmas Day this year to be with my family, and I just wanted to spend time with them and make sure that they had a good time with me. And so we got together for a nice dinner, and we had a wonderful time. We exchanged some gifts and so forth. And then we went home. Now, within a few days, people started reporting in from my various family members that they were getting sick. So probably, one of our family members had come down with something, and they had come and shared some viruses or germs or whatever. And so there were several that were reporting a fever and coughing and feeling sick and having, needed to go to bed, couldn't go to school, whatever. So that was what was going on. Now, for me, I was thinking like, I don't want that, but I still love my family. And it got down to the Monday after Christmas, and I was starting to feel not too good. And I thought, oh man, I still got some, gigs coming up here. I got to be ready. So I went to bed. But I remembered something from my experience with Chinese herbal medicine because I have been seeing a Chinese herbal doctor for about 20 years. And I've spent time trying to learn myself, more about it. And I remembered this particular product. It was called Ban Lan Gen, and or maybe I didn't say it right, but you get the idea. So I had some, and it was in this particular one was in a liquid form, and I took it, and I took it regularly as directed, and I stayed in bed the next day, took it also, and then by Wednesday, I was feeling okay. I was functional. I mean, I wasn't perfect, but I was feeling much, much better. I'd also, gargled with salt water and done a few other things, but that was primarily what I'd done with the rest. Now, that told me something that what I had been doing was either, I was either tricking my body into thinking that this stuff I was drinking was helping me, or it actually helped me. It's okay if it was placebo. I don't know, but I think it was more because this comes from a long, the Isatis comes from a very long history of use for, Chinese people many years ago, when there's a book here, I've got the medical classic of the Yellow Emperor. And this will be in English, of course, now, but written in Mandarin many, many years ago. And so the history of why the Chinese had studied what happens with the herbs and the natural products was that they had long periods of peace. The dynasties would often last for 200 or 300 years. And so instead of investing in making war all the time and defending yourself and fighting all your enemies, they often spent time focusing on what was going on with the body and learning about the meridians and about various conditions and writing it down and keeping somehow we kept this stuff. So, or I should say they kept it. I wasn't there. So I'm just trying to say there's a lot of wisdom there. And did they know about cells? Did they know about molecules? No, they didn't. They didn't know about, metabolism precisely, but they knew about the middle burner or stuff like that. So there's a number of things that they understood in a different way than we do in the West. I went to high school in Rochester, Minnesota, home of the Mayo Clinic. You can bet that, and of course, I think we had an IBM plant there at the same time. So in the West here, we have a linear thinking. We have A to B to C, it's progressive, but it's very linear in thinking. Well, when I was starting to learn about Chinese medicine around the year 2000, I got a book from Letha Haddadi. I've forgotten the title of the book, but and she, I believe, still is alive and lives in New York City. And she was writing about and trying to understand how it's more of a circle, that things are impinging on each other, influencing each other. So we have the 5 major organ systems in the body. And this isn't to teach you about Chinese medicine per se, but just to say there is a reason to it, and it's different than we have in the West. So looking for some validation of what, when I was thinking about the coronavirus, I was thinking about it, I knew it was an RNA virus. I knew that the problems that we would possibly encounter with it would be if we got sick enough, we would get pneumonia, our lungs would start to fill up with fluid and these little tiny sacs in there, and we'd have a really hard time exchanging the oxygen and the carbon dioxide and in our lungs, which we need to do to stay alive. So, I also, we're looking at, I will hope to put a link in the show notes or maybe in my own notes after I post this, explaining some of these details. There have been some excellent videos produced by others, and I've forgotten I think it's MedCram Lectures or something like that is the name of the channel on YouTube. They really did a great job explaining what kind of trouble you can get into with a severe acute respiratory disease with this, and how you might have to have a ventilator, and so I mean, if you get really really sick, and of course there's a lot of high tech stuff involved with that. And I guess that's really the problem, was if you had a large number of people who were severely ill, our system would become overwhelmed, and then we wouldn't be able to treat, and then some people would get treatment and hopefully recover, but those who couldn't get treatment, they might pass away. And that's a serious thing. Anyway, so getting back to this, I just wanted to see if there was some evidence that with this new virus that we're saying it's new, never been in humans before, at least that's what we think. We don't know where it came from. At first they were saying it was zoonotic. It jumped from an animal to us in a wet market in Wuhan, Hubei province. And others were now saying, well, maybe it was an engineered virus that was designed by a scientist to study how viruses act, and that's another possibility. We don't know, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I don't think there's anything nefarious involved. I certainly don't think it's something that we will know for sure for a very long time. And I just hope for the best for all people involved, including all the folks that have been sick in China and those that have been affected by this worldwide. And so we're just hoping for the best. So getting back to where I decided to go in my pea brain, thinking about why I would want to study this, I was at a Trader Joe's the other day, which is a retail store. They sell food and wine, things like that. And I saw a young lady and happened to mention that I've been learning about the coronavirus. And, she opened up to me, and because I'd asked her where something was, and we were talking a little bit. And she told me she was really scared. And I said, well, you're young, number one. Number two, you should do better than others. Number three, we are going to help each other through this. This is not just she and I, but we as a group of people, as a society, I hope will take a very serious look at this and decide to work with each other, to help each other, to do what we can. Because honestly, none of us is going to get out of this life alive. Eventually, we're all going to pass away. And there's a mercy that we can show to one another. I'd love to do that. I think it's the right thing to do. I've been disappointed in our Congress and deciding to, for whatever reason, they wanted to attack the president, wanted to get rid of the president. Okay, that's what you want to do. But I think that they were distracted at a critical time. We had some real serious information that was coming out in January of this year. And I don't think they were thinking about it. They were aiming, shooting guns at each other. And now there's this big, primary and everything going on. And so anyway, I just hope that a lot of folks in our government start to focus on defending us from a foreign invader. It's a virus. It's not a virus that has any kind of skin color. It doesn't speak a language, at least not one that we understand. And let's see what we can do. So let's see. We looked at the virus, a little picture that this is an illustration of what the virus looks like. And then this next one is an actual photomicrograph, transmission electron photomicrograph. And I didn't blow it up a lot, but you can kind of see that there's these little spiky things from some of these little parts. And they are the reason why it's called a coronavirus. It's like a crown. So the WHO has said the disease name is COVID-19. So coronavirus disease from 2019, and is caused by the new name for the virus is called the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The severe acute respiratory syndrome is SARS, then coronavirus number 2. So it's actually named after its little brother number 1. Whatever, they didn't call it number 1. So let's see if we got that one. This is again an illustration of the virus done by someone, and they have some of these little pieces that they think are coming out of the protein-wrapped RNA inside, and you can see the S protein in particular. I think that's where things connect up. There's a lot of talk about it, how it enters the cell, but I don't think it's something that we have to worry about here, because it's not going to really help. Because I'm not talking about drug discovery per se, but what I am thinking about is, are there things that exist in plants now that when you have a plant and it has ingredients in it, a number of molecules in it, we don't have to separate them all out. We don't have to come up with one single molecule and then figure out a way to mass produce that one single molecule to fix us. You can just take a biomass or an extract with water or alcohol or however you're going to do it, and use that as a medicine. I mean, that's what we have done for most of the history of mankind. That Iceman that fell in the crevasse in I don't know whether it was Italy or Germany 5,000 years ago or something, had some mushrooms in his little pouch, and it's probably that the mushrooms are there for some medicinal reason. So anyway, we'll go back to it. So I've got some papers I was looking at. I mean, I read papers, and I thought we would take a look at them and see what I can learn or what I can share with you. I think this is it. So this is one that I found. Now, I accessed this on February the 21st, 2020. I believe it was published officially on February 17th, 2020. Today is the 23rd, so it's not very many days ago, not even a week ago. And it was received for a review on the 13th of February, 2020. So this is, they marked it hot topic. This is hot off the press. The Chinese Journal of Integrative Medicine. Now in China, they do use, herbal medicine along with Western medicine. It's not one or the other. You don't go to one type of hospital for one and one type of hospital for the other. They're allowed to use both. Here it would be a little different, but just we'll look at some of these things. Let's see if I move this up. This is the abstract. This is kind of the summary of what they're going to be talking about here. And let's see. They're just saying that the use of Chinese medicine in the past has been to prevent epidemics of infectious disease, and it goes back many years, maybe 1,000 years or more. They talk about febrile diseases. Chinese talk about heat, and that would be what we would call, the swelling in the heat of the Western descriptions. So, but this paper is looking at a number of things. Let's see here. This is what I was going to read. So we have okay, you can see how it goes out of focus. Isn't that wonderful? This technology. Let's see if I can trick it back in there and back into focus. Okay, so it says, although the WHO said to date there is no specific medicine recommended to prevent or treat the novel coronavirus, in China, historically, when the outbreak started, Chinese medicine, CM, approaches including oral administration of preventive herbal formula, wearing Chinese medicine sachets, indoor herbal medicine fumigation were recommended for prevention and treatment. Of course, they were recommended for this by the government. So, boy, this is annoying. So we have the people deciding what to do, and they're looking at a number of things. They're looking at what happened in the past. They're looking at even fairly recent things like the SARS outbreak, or you have down here it talks about the SARS or the H1N1 influenza. So these are things that are happening within the last 20 years. And they've done some studies after all these things have happened. So we're just going to go ahead and look and see what else is on here. I might have marked some papers. But they list a number of herbs. You can see here a listing of many herbs that have been used. And I'm familiar with some of these, so I think they on the summary here at the beginning, they have a number of listed, astragalus or huangqi. That is an herb that literally is sold in Chinese or Asian interest grocery stores. And it's used by people all the time, Radix glycyrrhizia gansao, which is it's a honeyed licorice. The radix, I would say fong fong is easier to say. I worked on Saposh nikovia is the, I think it's probably the genus name. And then, of course, the Tractylus macrocephala, that's the big-headed tractylodes. Lonicera japonica, which is the honeysuckle. And Fructus forsythia. That's an herb that's been used by people, as an antiviral quite a bit. And so these are some of the ones that they're talking about, like the leading candidates would be about 6. Now, you notice that Isatis is not one of those, but we will get to why I had decided to take a look at that a little bit later. Let's see. Okay, so we got there 6 common ones noted here, which we've just talked about. And have we got anything else here? Oh. Now, here was an interesting thing I came across right here. The National Health Commission of the People's Republic of China. And this was the diagnosis and treatment of pneumonia caused by the 2019 new coronavirus. At the time, it was called the 2019-CoV. And this was published in January 22nd of 2020. And there's if you can read this, there's a link there where I accessed that paper. Now, I know that the Chinese government has been criticized a great deal, but you have to understand that it's a very large nation. It's a centralized government. And so we have things that are happening there that are involved with. Let's see if I can make this thing work. Come back to you. There we are. They have things that are involved with collecting data and keeping it and figuring out things. So the fact that on the 22nd of January they put out the guidelines of how to treat this disease, what they knew at that time, meant that it had to be collected and approved by somebody and, written, first of all. And then, I know I've seen reports that Xi Jinping was briefed on the 7th of January regarding this. You need to come to an understanding of China from the standpoint of what their holidays are like. There are 2 big holidays every year. They'll last a week or longer. One is Golden Week, which is in October, and the other one is the Spring Festival or the Lunar New Year. And that one is like Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's all wrapped up into one thing, the way from our standpoint of the West. And people, even if they've been working in a city, they travel home or they travel, long distances away because they want to be with their family. They want to be, this is, especially when you think about a one-child policy for many years, families are small, and the people, your folks are pretty precious, and you as a child are precious to your folks, and so that's what's going to happen. And of course, there's a lot of fun little things. The red envelopes. I don't know if you hang out with Chinese folks, you'll know what a red envelope is, and so forth. So there's a trust that is engendered also when they eat together. Around 2005, I spent a few weeks in China. At that time, I was working on importing herbs and studying herbs and things. And I remember being with a particular company in Shenyang, and spending time in the evenings with them. And the president of the company, would sit right next to me, and over time, through that week, he would, take from the serving dish, put it on his plate, and then put some on my plate from his plate. So it's basically sharing plates, and that you can tell if someone is your friend, your trusted person, if you intimately share food. Now, in Wuhan, you've probably heard the report of this large potluck dinner for 40,000 families, 100,000 people or so getting together for a meal. And it just happened to hit just at the wrong time. It was one of those, I don't want to say, it wasn't really a black swan event, perhaps, but it was more of a terribly perfect storm for there to be a widespread of this particular disease, COVID-19. So I'm just saying, perhaps rather than, thinking bad thoughts about Chinese people, just come to an understanding of what happened, and realize that they didn't want this to happen either. But you also have, the top-down power structure. The people that run a province do not want to mess up with Beijing. They want they want the good news to flow and the bad news to be put down. And that's probably what happened. So let's just relax and say that they're just people too. And was it handled perfectly? Was it handled the way you might have done it? You might have done it. I might have done it. Maybe not. But we're not in that driver's seat right now. So let's go back to see if we can see this screen. I guess we can, sort of. This was written a few years ago. If you look up here, it says the 2004 rather, the Journal of Traditional Complementary Medicine. And so it's published, and this is the part that I think was pretty important to take a look at. It says inflammation is a normal immune response, but if the body's regulation of inflammation is dysfunctional, then it will have an adverse effect on the body. I think that everybody kind of knows that. Although use of modern drugs for inflammation has been had a relieving effect, it is still unsatisfactory. And I think if you understand this from the standpoint of like ibuprofen as an example, as a drug given to reduce inflammation, it does not allow the inflammatory cycle to be restored to its proper homeostasis. It doesn't come back to normal. It just doesn't allow that full healing to happen. And I think that's what they're referring to, that there are some anti-inflammatories which are necessary at times, acute injuries and so forth, but that they really should not be taken over a longer period of time, because you don't bring the body back to its center. Here it talks about heat-clearing Chinese herbs. We have the review, the heat-clearing Chinese herbs. We have Scutellariae bicalensis, Coptis chinensis, Phlos lanicera. That's the wild honeysuckle. Forsythia suspensa, and Isatis folium. Now this is getting into our Isatis. So Isatis folium would be the part of the plant that grows above ground. And I'm just going to take a minute to show you what that looks like. We have this here. These are bulk, dried Chinese herbs. Now, this is like a twig, and the leaves are here. And these are available for purchase. I mean, I'll probably put a link in the show notes. So if you want to buy some, you can. I'm not, again, for disclosure, I'm not selling anything. If you buy some from the friend that I'm going to link to, great, fine, because he's my friend, and I've been buying stuff from him for the last 20 years. If you buy it from somebody else, fine, it's okay. But that's what it looks like, And I've actually made some tea from this today, and I'm going to drink some in a little while to show you, kind of. So you have the the other part, which is the radix Isatis. So that it would be, again, the root of the plant, and that's what these look like here. These are pieces, slices of the root, and this is the way they prepare them. These are dried herbs, and so you can see, you know, the little bit of the outside where it touches the dirt, and the inside. I've forgotten the plant parts, but you know, the very center part of it is a different color. So Isatis has another, you know, common name in English called Dyer's woad. So people that were trying to come up with indigo, I should say, I think the color indigo is rooted from this plant, these plant parts. Again, going back to the upper part, you can see how dark this is, you know, and so they would be used for drawing out color. Now, and then we go on with some more. So we have Viola yadoensis. Now, my Chinese doctor, Dr. Sun, really likes what Viola does, and she thinks that it would be an important herb to be considered for all these things as well. And then let's see, Pulsatilla radix. So that this one I don't know. Andrographis paniculata I'm familiar with over the years, and Hetunia cordata is another one I'm familiar with, and Petrinia I'm not familiar with that one. So, well, this would be a list of 11 what are called heat clearing herbs. And so if you have a fever or you're feeling warm, then you know, a Chinese medicine doctor would possibly use some of these in a formula to help bring you back to that midpoint, stasis, the healthy point. So these are some of the herbs listed there. And so what I'm trying to say is, in thinking about what's important for my choices for my family, that's because what we're talking about here is, you know, what did I want to pick for my family? It's something I've had experience with. The Isatis, I mentioned to you how I had gotten well more quickly than I should have been. You know, my other family members who were not taking the Isatis at Christmas time, after Christmas, stayed sick for a week or more. And maybe I was lucky. Maybe something else going on else. I can't prove anything. It's what we call an N of 1, you know. But this is why I'm picking, you know, getting into these kinds of herbs, in particular the ones I picked there. And let's see if we got some other. So these are just kind of, you know, a little more detail of each one. And I've looked at some of these and probably used some of these in the past also, other times. So that's, again, where my brain was going, why I picked this one. And there's a lot of references. You know, not everybody is going to look at what are called natural products. I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Jerry McLaughlin and Dr. Bill Keller some years ago. There were researchers with it's called the American Society of Pharmacognosy, and these are the folks that look at plant materials looking for medicines. And Dr. McLaughlin is somebody I did get to know, and I had learned a lot from him about his work with the pawpaw plant, and I just spent some time with him. I thought about writing a book, but I ended up just making a video of his lecture that he gave, a public lecture, and also doing an interview with him, which I put up online. I think it's still on YouTube somewhere. Actually, on this site, if you dig around, you can probably find it. So these are just some details about these various plants and how they might be used or what they've been studied with. So, you know, we have the radix Isata. We have, let's see, it says blood neutrophil, phagocytosis, and so forth. Anyway, not to worry. Now, for those of you who want proof, or you want to look it up yourself, or maybe you read Mandarin, and wanted to see. This was the paper that the Chinese government again published on the 22nd of January, titled Diagnosis and Treatment of Pneumonia Caused by the 2019 New Coronavirus, the 2019 nCoV, and published again 1/22/2020, January 22nd. And if you look at the paper, it has a few English words sprinkled in there, just for fun, But the main thing is to get to the back of it and look at the last page, and you'll see down at the bottom here pretty clearly the date. So this was what the guidance, one of the things that the Chinese government published to guide its own citizens as they dealt with this particular virus. So now, looking at Isatis in particular, what might be happening. Now, I only really looked at 2 studies that were of specific molecules that are in Isatis, that are known to be in Isatis. One is called indirubin, and the other is epigoitrin. So, indirubin, the way they studied this, they were looking at mice. Now, of course, you can't take people and do things to people that, if you're trying to, save the planet and save the animals and say you shouldn't do research on animals, sometimes they have to use animals, and I think that's a reasonable thing, although I don't want to use them indiscriminately. So what they did here was to look at what happens with H1N1, which is one of the flus that's giving trouble to people. And they specifically, if you just look at the title, it's indirubin. It's a type of alkaloid from the plant, Isatis indicatica. Oh, whatever. One of these days I'll get it right. It reduced the H1N1 susceptibility in stressed mice by regulating the MAVS signaling pathway. So MAVS stands for mitochondrial antiviral signal. And so this is looking at one particular mechanism. And so if you look at the abstract again, it's talking about the long history, and then it's talking about some of the things that you might be looking at to what it might be useful for. And they're just trying to figure out how it works, and that's what this study's about. So, over here you've got a picture of the molecule. So you have some various carbon rings. You've got a couple of nitrogens hiding in there. One thing I've learned from my friend Bill Keller was, and by the way, nitrogen is a very reactive thing. So I don't really understand a lot of chemistry, so I just appreciate other people who do and write about it. So what they did with these mice, one of the things they did with these mice was to stress the mice by making them kind of stay in one place, and then they would induce influenza in the mice. So they'd make them sick, and they would have a control. So maybe with no treatment, they would have treatment with what we call Tamiflu. I think I've forgotten the otamivir or something like that. The molecule name is, and then they also would use the indirubin as a treatment thing, and then make assessments based on which is which. Let's see if I got here. So you have the normal without virus. You have the virus. Then you have oseltamivir is that one, and then indirubin H and indirubin L. So these would be differences of different forms of this particular molecule, and you can see the bar graph. And I'm presuming that they would consider the lower better. So indirubin and these two are not quite as good as Tamiflu in terms of this particular test that they're dealing with. Now, looking forward a little ways, let's see, I believe you get into, they have a really nice picture down the way here. It's a chart, I'll call it a graphic. So If you look at the graphic here, you have this area over here is outside of the cell, and then you have the cell membrane with all these little lipid molecules that are, they're polar, and they keep the water out and they let fatty things in. So somehow the virus gets in. Now, I've seen some people talking about, how does the RNA virus enter the cell? Because if they could block that, then of course that would be a drug target. This is not that. This is not trying to say that it blocks that. And I've heard people discussing what that particular entry point is. Whether it's called an AT1 entry point, and it's somehow controlled by, let's see, I can't remember the ACE2 inhibitor. I've forgotten what ACE stands for. But anyway, just saying that that's not what this is. So you have a little illustration of the mitochondria, and at the surface of the mitochondria, and a lot of things happen at the surface of the mitochondria, inside the cell, but not inside the nucleus. The nucleus would be on the side of this. So where my finger is right now is the nucleus. This is the cytoplasm. And so you have the viruses coming in, the little RNA strands, and they would then trigger various transitions. But they would also cause the MAVS, the mitochondrial antiviral signal, to migrate to that lining and then be activated. And there's another thing called sting, which I won't go into right now. I think, let's see. Well, anyway, the explanation of all those little abbreviations are down further in the article. But just to look at this and then realize that there are a couple of different pathways involved. One would be the NF-kappa B, nuclear factor kappa B. The B comes from the B cell where it was discovered. And this was an interesting pathway to work with. So it has a particular molecule joins up with a receptor. It gets phosphorylated, and then it causes that to transfer and enter into the nucleus. And then the other one is involved with this let's see, it's a phosphorylation of IRF3. I've forgotten what that stands for again, but the point is that there are some things that happen as a result of this that are effects that affect the ability of the virus to replicate, and not just to replicate, but the whole business is relating to, let's see if I can pull it. No, I didn't quite make it. Let's see if I can do it. Let's see, we do that. Yeah, there I am back again. So the virus, in a stressed state, the cell does not handle the virus attack very well. The immune system is altered by the level of cortisone. Corticosterone in the mouse, which is what they make. They can't make the cortisol that we make. You probably have heard the term cortisol as a hormone that's in the human body. And we also we do make a little bit of the corticosterone. So their study in this little diagram I was showing you before has to do with the elevation of corticosterone, which stops or inhibits the immune cells from the natural killer cells from attacking these. So it's an innate immune function that is inhibited by the rise in corticosterone. And we have some corticosterone in us as well, and so it's likely, again, this is a mouse study, it doesn't necessarily transfer directly to humans, but it probably does. So, this is how we do it in science. We study something in a mouse, and then we look to see if we can figure out a way to prove it or not prove it in humans. At least we get some leads, And so cortisol goes up, human immune function goes down, and our defenses are down. So by changing that dynamic of reducing the corticosterone and perhaps the cortisol, it allows us to resist. So it's a resistance effort here. And quite frankly, that's what my hope is when I take the Isatis, I'm going to be taking and probably giving to my family members if they'll take it. My wife said she will. Whether my kids and grandkids do, I don't know. No control there. But the whole point is that I believe that this will help control it. Now, in the mouse, when they do this treatment, then the mice recover quicker, or they live a little longer, or something like that. So that's how they measure that. And they also take a look inside. They have to sacrifice animals and look inside as to what was happening in the lungs and different things. So let's see if I got anything else I want to read from this. Yeah, let me pull that up again if I can. Let's see, we got I think there we are. Hey, it didn't go out of focus yet. Oh, there. Now it went out of focus. So this is great. So I'm just going to read you some words. Even if you can't see it, if it goes out of focus, who cares? So here are the evidence. So we're slightly off camera. There we go. The evidence has shown excessive inflammatory infiltrates and lung tissue injury are main factors accounting for high mortality following influenza virus infection. Now, I'm just saying that that's exactly what I was reading about with this new coronavirus that we're dealing with now. That is what's killing people, at least initially. I guess you can only die once, right? So these terrible injuries are because the elevation of the inflammatory infiltrates is damaging the tissue. Now, it's damaging the tissue so that it can kill the viruses that are in those cells, but it's still making a mess. There's a wonderful bit of research, or not a bit, but quite a bit of research done by a guy named Kevin Tracy that I read some years ago, unrelated to this. I'm just saying it's a fascinating story of how the immune system works. I think he made a popular book called The Killer Within, which I still have on my bookshelf. I still look at it. It's a fascinating story. And whoever wrote the book, whether he did or he had a ghostwriter, I'm not sure, but did a great job of storytelling. So it says here, our results indicated that the interferon treatment could mitigate lung edema and inflammatory cells infiltration caused by influenza virus infection in stressed mice. So these, again, are RNA viruses. They're similar to what you're dealing with the coronavirus. And when the host is infected with influenza virus, macrophages, neutrophils, are recruited into the lung and produce pro-inflammatory cytokines to aid the immune response and limit the influenza virus spread. So that's what's happening. However, the cytokine storm, and I'm sure you probably have heard this term if you've been paying attention, the cytokine storm and excessive chemokines, so these are signaling molecules and cytokines, may lead to lung damage. Now, you have lung damage, and some other people that are smarter than me have explained this to me in videos recently I've been watching. So you have the damage to the lungs. The immune system may come along and finally kill those cells, but the tissue is damaged. Now, what happens with the Mr. Joe Average Staph aureus or some other kind of bacteria that comes along and says, you know what, this looks like a great place to set up camp, and I'm going to attack here. So people who are getting sick with this, who have been fighting this in their bodies, their own immune cells are fighting it, there's a lot of damage afterwards, and bacterial infections sometimes come along and then actually take their lives. So it's just a great thing to see what you can do about the excess amount of TNF-alpha. Now, TNF-alpha is kind of an interesting story. It stands for a tumor necrosis factor, and alpha would be, which one of these that there are. And I think last time I was reading this kind of material, I think they had like 21 or 23 different kinds of TNF. Originally, it was discovered by a fellow named Old, and he had one other partner, I've forgotten the guy's name, but they found it in a tumor, a cancer. And so they called it necrosis factor because it was, necrotizing or killing the cells in a messy way. You have a couple ways that cells can die. One is called apoptosis. That's the way the British say it. Some Americans say apoptosis, but it just doesn't flow. I love apoptosis. So the necrosis is a messy way of dying. Apoptosis is usually controlled by the mitochondria, and it has a very orderly way so that the materials in the cell can be used again. They're not, and it doesn't create a big mess, a big glop of dead stuff. It isn't, but the necrosis thing you don't want. So tumor necrosis factor, which causes that type of death, gets too high, and then you have problems. So you don't want to mess up your lungs with that. So interleukin-1 beta, which is what's coming out of the activity. Remember that mitochondrial antivirus signal and the other one, along with that, is a way to, let's see, I'll just read it here. Let's see. It mediates the acute pulmonary inflammatory pathology. So you want interleukin-1 beta to come along and help. And that's because it's being created by this MAVS activity. It moves, again, this unit moves to the mitochondrial membrane and then starts pumping out the signaling molecules that create this interleukin-1 beta. So that's a good thing. I'll just get down to the end here. You look, I mean, right before that, it talks about the interleukin-10, IL-10, which shows up usually when you're trying to kind of get back to normal in some tissue. So our results showed that the indirubin treatment lessened the production of TNF-alpha, IL-1beta, and interleukin-6, will enhance the production of interleukin-10 in the lung tissues of influenza-infected mice loaded with stress. Our results found that indirubin exerted an anti-inflammation effect. All the results above indicated that indirubin ameliorated viral pneumonia and restrained stress to mice. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, if you get a pneumonia, we don't want you to be sick for long. I just don't want to get pneumonia at all. And so that's why I'm interested in this stuff. I mean, is it possible that it doesn't have any effect on the coronavirus that we're talking about? Sure, very, very possible. But what else have we got to work with? Can we go down and try a different something? No, we don't. We have some plants. We can try different plants, but we don't have any vaccines. We don't have any treatment drugs. It's a novel virus, meaning new, and hasn't been in people before. And so that's the reason why it led me to this point. I mean, this is one paper. There's another one we'll talk about in a second. With the apigoitrin. Let's see. I don't know if I've got any more things I wanted to talk about here. I don't think so. But just to say, we're coming up on this here. So here's the next one. The apigoitrin and alkaloid from Isatis indigotica. I'm getting better. Reduces H1N1 infection in stress-induced susceptible model in vivo and in vitro. So they're, again, looking at both cells and other things. So, stress has been proven to modulate the individual's immune system through the release of pituitary and adrenal hormones, such as the catecholamines, growth hormone, and glucocorticoids. These signal molecules can significantly alter the host immune system and make it susceptible to viral infection. That's the whole deal here. Can significantly alter and make it susceptible to viral infection. So I don't want my cells to have susceptibility to viruses, and if I can take some of this stuff and make a tea out of it and drink it, and if it's going to change that because it's got apigoitrin in there, it might help me. It might help my family. That's why I'm looking at this. And there's other things to look at. So there's some small changes in the way this works versus the Interferon. But again, when you're dealing with a plant like this, let's see if I can pull myself up here. There we go. Now I'm coming in. If you're dealing with a plant, you're dealing with many, many kinds of molecules in there. And they may have several different activities. And quite frankly, many of them work synergistically. So they might not be strong. Like in a Western medicine, you'd have one single molecule that would be, in this tiny little pill, and you take it and you're going to get better. But it might have, 2 or 10 or 15 different molecules all weak, but working together. And the way Chinese medicine works frequently is they'll use a number of herbs. So they might even have, I've had formulas from my Chinese doctor that had 12 or 15 different individual herbs in there, each one having a particular activity. It's a complicated thing. Now, again, from Western medicine, they say, well, give me the how do they say it? Placebo-controlled, randomized, double crossover study that runs for 20 years. Then we'll know, the truth. Can we wait? Can I wait? I can't wait. I got to do something. And, placebo, well, whatever. So these are common herbs. I'm the ones I'm talking about and showing you today, these these guys are common. They're known to people. These are not some secret, these you see these little ads about this man went to the faraway, farthest reaches of the Amazon and jungle and spent 20 years digging through and getting the secrets from the people that dwell there about how they cure this or that. They make a whole story. We love stories, but the truth is the Chinese been writing it down for a long time. And we just, because we don't read, we don't read the right, let's see if I can pull up that paper. Well, anyway, what Chinese characters look like. So I'm just saying, relax, maybe this is something that's going to help people. Let's see what else I got here. Anything good to say from this paper? And they have a similar picture as we saw before with that mitochondrial antiviral signaling molecule. And there's some other ones involved. Let's see if I can pull this up. Let's see, we got, there we go. So, you kind of look, they were probably borrowed from, or maybe the same artist drew them for them. There's a few different molecules involved, but it's a similar thing that you get the epigoitrin coming in, you get the glucoceron here, and viral DNA and things, activities. And so this is where we are. And I think we're getting down to the bottom of my papers. So I've got one more thing to say, which I've underlined. Mitochondrial were essential for triggering the cellular innate immune responses via MAVS against invading viruses, especially RNA viruses. When I read that sentence, I said, that's the one. I'm going with, I'm going out of focus. So that's why we're going with the, this is a, I told you I was going to show you the packaged goods. So this is the beverage of Ban Lan Gen, and they make colorful packages. What this is a packaged drink mix. It'll have a little packet in there like this that you tear open or cut open and put it in some hot water, mix it up, and then drink it. And because they know people like sugar, they put sugar in it. Now, there are actually two versions of this. You can get the one with sugar or the one with it says sugar-free. I'll show you the package real quick. This is the other one that is available. My friend happens to sell these, and you can probably buy these types of things many places. So it says sugar-free. Now, what actually that means is it doesn't mean sugar-free like there's no sweetener in it, or no glucose in it, but there's no, table sugar, that our common sugar that we talk about, which has fructose. So if you listen to Dr. Robert Lustig, you know that he is not a fan of fructose and not a fan of sweeteners. In general, I agree with him. In fact, I have really changed my life a lot over the last few years. As a Santa, I was over 100 pounds bigger than I am now 4 years ago. And part of it, the decision is to cut out the processed foods and cut out the sugar. So, but that's another story. Although it actually affects immune system as well. So if you're going to take these packaged products, and so I'm going to pull up one of these here. I have made, I guess you can't really see through this very well. I pull it up here. I guess you can kind of, it doesn't work any better. I'm just saying there's a packaged product like this, which is sweetened. So earlier, before I started the video, I made packets into hot water, or one packet into hot water, and just to say this is what. So this was the one with sugar in it. It's not real sweet, but it does have, it's sweetened. And then I also took, I measured out, I think it was 12 grams of each of the two herbs, put them in about 4 cups of water, and I made an herbal tea. Now, I did it in kind of a way, I don't know if it's even officially approved, but I did it in the Instant Pot. So those of you who may have watched some other videos know I'm an Instant Pot fan. And so I have that tea as well, which I have made. And it looks very similar. It's kind of a dark amber color. I put some in here. And I actually did taste it earlier because I didn't know how bad it was going to be. So I'll taste it on camera. It tastes very similar, and it's actually quite pleasant. Now, I'm used to drinking weird stuff like this. So you might try it and go, oh, help, and then what you would do is put some sugar in it. Now, you could use table sugar, which is, evil incarnate. I don't like it, and I actually would prefer that we didn't put it in anything. But what I want you to think about is you could also use rice bran syrup, which is basically what, this is the so-called sugar-free version, but this actually has mannitol, which is made from glucose. So mannitol would have more than one glucose molecule. I think it may be 2, or I'm not sure how many. But glucose, when paired with itself, it comes apart and is metabolized. Doesn't hurt us. Not a lot, anyway. Now, if we took a huge amount of it, we'd probably overwhelm our livers and stuff like that. But not like what happens with fructose. Now, there's another video someday I'll make that shows that you can take about a shot glass full of Coca-Cola, and that's about all the fructose your body can handle at one sitting. I've never seen anybody serve Coke in a shot glass. So anyway, that's another story. Okay, so we've talked about packaged herbs, which are available. Again, my friend sells them at his store, and I'll put a link so you can buy it through his website. You don't have to buy somewhere else, or don't buy it, or it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter to me for my family, but you do what you think. Raw herbs, which actually would probably be a little more economical. You buy a pound of each one of these two things. You spend some money. It's not free, but then you have quite a bit of stuff, and you could cook them and do them at home, and kind of make a venture out of the deal. So that's that. So we've talked about other people who make videos. One particular guy I want to mention who has been a marvelous help to me to understanding what's going on. Now, we know that the data from China has not been, perfect in their collection of data, whether they have kept data from us or it's kind of a messy way to collect data about sick people. We don't know, and it's okay, But Dr. John Campbell, if you look for his channel on YouTube, he's a lovely. I've never met him, or I don't know anything about him except that he seems to be a lovely physician from the UK. And I have listened to several other people talk about this that are probably giving good factual information, but they do it in a way that makes me more scared just listening to him. And that's why I think John Campbell, if you're looking for a source of information about the coronavirus, the whole, COVID-19 business, the disease, he's a good one. And I think he's a straight shooter. And he has friends kind of all over the world and gets emails from folks in different countries and really knows kind of what's going on. So I recommend him. And there may be others, but that's what I recommend. I wrote down to please call your Congress member and tell them to get back to business. That wouldn't be a bad plan. I'd love it if they would think about helping other people besides themselves. And since they have that job, called a representative. So, anyway, they've been distracted by politics. Let us not be distracted by politics. Okay, you hate Trump, you love Trump, whatever. I'm not siding. I don't know what I'm going to do come November. But where I live, Los Angeles, if I point at the thing right there, we could have ground zero right here for this virus. It could be an epidemic. Looking back to 1918, 102 years ago, Los Angeles was a spot where they had trouble. They had quarantines and they shut movie theaters and churches and schools and there was a big deal, and it was a helpful thing to quarantine, to keep social isolation was important. I think we have to listen to the health authorities in our public health sector of what to do. I would really recommend listening to them. But we've got 60-some thousand people that are living either in their cars or on the streets, don't have bathrooms to use. If they get sick, do they have a bed? Do they, if they need to, if bad things happen to their body, things come out of their body, nobody's going to clean it up. It's just going to be there, and we're going to walk through it and carry it, and it's a bad thing. Mayor Garcetti and whoever else, and Nuri Martinez, which is my local person, please do something to deal with this so we don't have a public health emergency here in Los Angeles just because you couldn't figure out how to help homeless people get off the street. Okay. And the cost for that will be intensive care overload. There aren't enough ventilators if a lot of people get sick. It seems like, based on John Campbell and others that I've been listening to, that a lot of people are very seriously ill in China. In other countries, it may happen the same way. So, let's. I'm a person that prays. I'm not going to be so. Pretend that I'm this great scientist who never believes in anything of God or whatever. I'm just saying I'm hanging on Jesus. Talk to the one you worship, and let's get through this, and we'll be doing it together. And that is my end of my story. I think I've got. So that wasn't the one I wanted to come up with. Was it this one? No. This one? No. Well, I bet it was this one. This is the one. I am on a journey to live a healthy 100 years. Why not come along with me? Again, dedicated to Dr. George Howe and Li Chen's son, who have made a real difference in my life. And I just hope that you have people in your lives that have made those kind of differences to you. Peace to you. And as I sometimes say in my annoying videos, the pre-roll videos, see you later, alligator.